We're going to do the last segment of today's podcast. It's called Being Human. Essentially, for this one, I have a list of survey questions for you. Just questions, metaphysical questions about what it means to be human, about life, about the world. And I just want you to answer them with short answers. We don't have to go on and on. I have a whole whack of these, about 15 questions. And so give us a little paragraph response for each one. You got it?
Okay.
All right. Now I'm gonna put on the single person view. Give me 1 second. Actually, let me put the screen back up. Maybe we'll do it. Actually, maybe not. We'll leave it off. Speaker view. Okay, Adi. What don't you understand about people?
Oh my God, where to begin? I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand rage. I don't understand jealousy. I mean, I don't understand. Um, Often I don't understand. Uh, I mean, little things like small talk. I don't understand how people's minds work when it comes to talking about nothing. Um, I don't understand the desire to no, actually, I do understand that the desire to be the center of things, to be loved. I mean, I think that all sort of like fits in together. But I think ultimately, like, I don't want to be sort of virtue signaling here. I don't understand war. I do understand war, actually, but I think some of those emotions that I don't often feel, it's hard for me to sort of relate to in other people. Like especially when
Well,
it comes to anger.
okay, before we move on to the next question, you said I do understand war. So for
Mm.
people who don't understand war, you've had obviously a very up close and personal view of war, and you, I'm sure, have some amazing insights. But if you could boil it down into one paragraph, what could you explain to people who don't understand war to make it easier to understand?
The idea that war is always avoidable is not true in the world we live in today. It's not to do with human nature, it's to do with the frameworks that we've built for ourselves. Those frameworks, the nation state, the sort of neoliberal capitalist system that we live in, make war inevitable in the world we live in now. So if we want to eliminate war, we don't look at human nature, we look at the structures that we've created as humans. And I think that's the
Okay,
best way to understand how to
thank
avoid
you.
war. Yeah.
All right, how in control of your life do you feel?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say I feel at this point about 75% in control of my life, or 7.5 out of 10. Mostly in control. I mean, I don't think we're ever entirely in control, and nor would I want to be. I think it's good to have a little bit of uncertainty to keep things exciting and interesting, right? But
Okay,
generally,
next
yeah. Yeah.
question. Do you trust yourself?
In every scenario, no, not always. I think, like, I mean, I trust myself mostly to make good decisions for my life, and important decisions. Like, in a crunch, I do trust myself to make the right decisions. But sometimes, I've had a bit too much to drink, or like, or I'm a bit emotional. We all get emotional sometimes. That, yeah, I could make bad decisions sometimes. It can happen.
Why are so many people their own worst enemy?
Hmm. A lot, again, it has a lot to do with, knowing yourself. I think a lot of people do um, have a hard time figuring out. They have an idea of who they're supposed to be, based on usually misleading cues and information. These days, social media, what their friends are like, or what they see influencers being like, and then they try to emulate that because they think that's who they're supposed to be. And then it never goes well.
Okay. What gives you hope about the future?
um, my wife. Beyond that, um, Well, I think in human ingenuity, I think, at this point, with the crises we're facing today, I'm starting to lean more towards the only way we're going to get ourselves out of them is through human ingenuity, whether it means a new invention, a discovery. I mean, humans have proven that they're capable of amazing, amazing
But
things.
haven't
Also,
aren't humans also capable of taking someone's invention and turning it into a massive
of
a
course.
weapon of war?
Of course, of course. I mean, of course. I mean, there's the dark side as well, right? I mean, but you look at something like nuclear tech, right? I mean, you know, it's a terrifying, and the nuclear clock, the doomsday clock, has been put up another 30 seconds. I think it's at 190. What is it now? To 120? They 90 seconds. They've moved it to from 100 to 90 seconds just a couple of weeks ago. So I mean, yeah, the nuclear war, but we haven't had a nuclear war yet. And nuclear energy has really and still potentially can save us if we spend more time,
All
looking
right.
at that.
Well,
So
maybe
yeah.
you've kind of pre-answered the next question. What's one thing that needs to happen for the world to be a better place?
Aspirationally, or I mean, aspirationally, I mean, cold fusion would be great.
I
Wouldn't
think
that be
we're
fantastic?
making leaps and bounds in that area right now.
We're heading in that direction, right? But something like that, I mean, would be an amazing. I mean, God, I mean, even more sci-fi. I mean, somebody please invent a replicator. So
Yes,
we,
to
something
eliminate the
like,
need for money, right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. Um, what can you do, or what's one thing that you can do to make your life more meaningful?
Hmm. Write a book.
Yeah,
I think that would be my number one answer. Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree.
Watching my
So what's
wife do
holding
it,
you back from doing that?
just having the right idea and being, it's a terrifying prospect. I've seen my wife do it now. She just sent off her manuscript, her final draft, last week. Um, Watching her go through that, it's horrifying. It's a terrifying prospect, right?
Huh.
Um, so and she turned her PhD into a book, so she already had a sort of foundation to work with. I mean, starting from scratch.
Why horrifying? Like, what makes it so horrifying?
Well, horrifying is maybe the wrong word, but terrifying maybe is a better word. It's just frightening. It's not like a
Why? Like,
horror, like not the
are you
horror.
frightened of the book flopping or being rejected or not being well embraced or what?
All of the above and more, right? I mean, it's you put in a lot of effort into this. You put in a lot of time and it's mental power. Just I mean, the idea of writing a narrative for 350 pages.
All right.
Um,
Do you believe in karma or that you are paying off karma in this lifetime?
I believe, I believe it as an operating principle. I don't believe it necessarily as an esoteric sort of reality. In terms of an operating principle, I mean that how we act towards the world sets the standard for or will set the standard for how the world acts towards us, right? So in that operating sense, then yeah, I do. But from a Buddhist esoteric sense, I don't know. Is there somewhere in this universe where my karma is building up and being accumulated? I don't know if I believe in that, but I think it's good
All right.
to, yeah.
And how do you want people to remember you after you're gone?
Um, hmm. That I would like to people to know that, or at least on my gravestone, although I'd rather be cremated, but just that I never, as somebody who never stopped learning and became somebody who was always interested in learning. And I think that, this is something I've said to myself for years is like the moment you stop learning is the moment you start dying.
Hmm,
So I would rather go out constantly learning something new, a language, something.
I like that one. Okay. And what advice would you give to your younger self?
um oh gosh, I mean, so many things. um Seek out mentors. I think that's something that I didn't do enough of. I had a couple of mentors, but I think that they came later in my late 20s. I think seeking out mentors at an earlier stage and having more of them is mentorship is vastly underrated.
It's actually an interesting idea because maybe your parents are not always the most suited to be the ones guiding you in the direction where you want to go. And
No,
if you
definitely
can seek
not. I
out a
mean,
mentor that's way more apt at getting you for where you want to go, right?
yeah, well, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Two more questions. What happens to us when we die?
Oh gosh. I mean, do you, I mean, my, I'm an atheist, so um, I believe that what we're made of is breaks down and is reused. Like I mean, I think from a
So
very
nothing.
scientific.
So why is it important for people to ask this question? Why do people need an answer to this question?
Well, I think you're touching on a really important, I think, question that if we open that can of worms, we might be talking for the next few hours. But like this idea of I guess what you're intimating here is that without an afterlife, what's the point? What's the purpose, right? If there's nothing after you die, then what's the purpose of life, right? And I think that's an important question. I think we need to think about an atheist ethics. What is an atheist ethics, right? How do we live morally and ethically as an atheist? And I do believe in sort of entropy and the idea that we leave ripples in the in the universe, let's say, right? Like we do have ripple effects, and how we lead our lives determines how useful we're going to be to the universe once we die, right? I mean, so are we going to be able to come back into the sort of creative processes that the universe is sort of ruled by? That depends on how we live our life.
And who has been a huge inspiration in your life and why?
You're not fishing for a compliment here, are you?
No, I promise I'm not.
Just
I
joking.
plan on having random guests, not just best friends.
Huge influence in my life. I mean, lately I have to say my wife. I think that just in the last 10 years, especially, um, seeing how determined she is to, even in the face of like fear and just being terrified of what she's of the projects and the accomplishments that
You
she
make her
takes on.
job sound so terrifying. You've mentioned it about 6 times.
Well, I mean, writing a book is terrifying, but I mean, doing a PhD, I mean, just like, and doing a very difficult PhD in Afghanistan of all places, right? And just, like, and pursuing it and just being relentless, just being relentless and just not ever stopping, right? I think
I do
there's something
remember when I first met your wife, she had a certain ferocity, which was like outstanding. Like you could tell her that that's a fierce person. She's
to,
going to go places.